Hi, it's Ursula from ursula-smith.com, and I had been trying to decide on a clamping system. My hand is old and not in very good shape from years of doing computer work and working on the keyboard. And so just sawing is super hard for me. I have the new Concepts sawing or bench pin, and that helps with much of the work, but I still found, even though it was easier to saw, I really kind of wanted a clamping system. So what I ended up doing was I ordered the Swanstrom system and the Gary's clamp. So the Swanstrom system comes with this saw plate with the hole cut out of it, and then different plates that pop into it, and you can rotate and clamp your system down with the screws, and then put your saw blade up in through the middle and go to town and saw. It still wobbles around a lot when you're sawing. It can kind of pop up and down, so you still kind of have to hold on to it, which I wasn't completely psyched with, but it has this screw here that you use an Allen wrench to tighten, but you really kind of have to jack it, and I'm afraid it's going to get stripped, so I wasn't crazy about that feature. So let me talk about that first. So what I ended up doing for that is both for the Swanstrom plate and for the Gary's clamp, I ended up I actually already owned this. It's an Irwin Quick Grip, and especially for the Gary's clamp, it's really cool because the clamp has kind of a divot in it that matches perfectly on the Gary's clamp. And so I just kind of clamp it down, and then it doesn't move. And then that's just easier for me to unclip it, get it out of there, and move it like I need to and reclamp, rather than fiddling with an Allen wrench and missing, and then it's moving, and then I was just getting super annoyed. So the quick clamp works. It does work with the flat topped one as well. So I think that's the way I'm just going to deal with it. And then I can clamp it down. I don't have to use my hand to put tons of pressure on. I just kind of just lightly hold it. And then I can saw basically one-handed. So the other thing that I wasn't crazy about with either of these clamps is they came with dinky, tiny screws. Focus. So really, really tiny screws. And then this urethane washer that's supposed to protect your metal. I mean, most of the time I'm sawing, the metal around it is not super usable after I'm done sawing. So, I mean, okay, maybe. But the one that comes with the screw it's almost like a screw itself. So it doesn't float easily up and down the screw shaft. So when you're trying to deal with teeny tiny screws to get the metal underneath it, because a lot of it's taken up by screwing into the actual arms, and then that urethane thing is kind of getting in the way, and it's not easy to push up and down. I know a lot of people have complained about this. So one option is you could just use I forget what these knives are called, but they're super, super thin, and oh, by the way, super sharp. So be careful with them. And you could just kind of put it, but you're still trying to do things one hand, whatever. I mean, it's an option, but I didn't love that feature. So what I ended up doing was, I bought a set of screws and washers and nuts, or bolts, nuts, and washers. And the one that ended up working was number 6-32 and the 3/8 inch size. This set also had a 5/8 inch. I feel like half an inch might have been really good, but the 3/8 was fine. And so I replaced all the dinky tiny screws with that size in my Gary's clamp. The screw head on that particular set is smaller than the original, but I added a washer, or a nut, sorry, that's even wider, so that should be fine. And then I ended up making my own urethane washers. And so what I did was I had already bought, this is a sheet of urethane. It's a Pepe Tools urethane mat. I had already owned one because I got it with a metal punch set. And it in that case, it was to try and kind of deafen the sound so that as you're banging on metal, you're not hearing that loud pinging sound. And it kind of protects the tools as well. So with my hydraulic press, I was looking for some thinner, stronger urethane, and rather than the thicker stuff that I got with the Potter that I order from Potter USA. So this is, I can't remember if it's 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. I think it's 1/4 of an inch, but don't quote me on that. But it was thin enough that I could punch out shapes. You're not really supposed to drill or saw or anything that causes friction/heat on the urethane because the smells are not good for you. So what I ended up doing was I punched a large circle, and then into that large circle, I punched a smaller circle. I didn't care whether it was completely in the middle. I mean, I didn't, put a dot and line it up and whatever. It was close enough. So what I used to punch the big circles was this Euro Power Punch by Euro Tool. I love this thing. It punches a bunch of different sizes of metal, but, small discs. So this one was actually, I think, the largest size. And then I could have punched, the holes in the middle and then lined it up to punch the bigger hole, but I didn't want to do that. And so for the small hole, what I did after I punched the big circles was I used this, it's a leather punch set, and I used the second to largest, so the number 4 or 4mm punch, just with the little base it came with and a hammer. I actually bought this to punch. I love this thing for using my punches. It just works like a charm. And so that's what cut out that little hole. And that was slightly bigger than the screw shaft, and so you could push it up and down much more easily. And so now when I go to put the metal in, even like holding it up and down or upside down, you can kind of push everything one-handed rather than having to screw that little washer as well. And then with the longer screw or bolts or screw, whatever you call it, there's just more room to kind of get your metal in and underneath it. So I feel like that way the system's going to work a lot better for me. And then the other thing that I really could not understand is with the set, I think it was actually with the Gary's clamp, they included a screwdriver, which is very nice of them. But it's this little squatty one, really fat. I mean, it's really easy to use, except for this particular system. So if you've got your metal all set up in your clamps, and then you have your saw coming up through the middle, and you're trying to saw teeny tiny things, and you have to make an adjustment, that you can't do it. The saw is in the way, and you can't come in from it sideways. And I mean, if I could have found this style of screw, I wasn't quite sure on the sizing, so that's why I ordered the assortment. But now that I know what size fits, this size, even though it's for, use with an Allen wrench, I can just do this with my fingers. So if I can find the matching size with that head, I'm going to switch them out again. And then I don't even need a screwdriver. But in the meantime, what I did was I had these magnetic screwdrivers with the different heads. And so I just keep one with the Phillips head for the screws. And it's much taller, so I can much more ease and skinnier. So it's just easier to get at those screws with the saw in there. And then I was switching the heads in and out for the Allen wrench one, but then I raided my husband's tools case and found another one. And so I'm ordering him one as a replacement, but now I have one of each, and they're just stuck to my magnetic bar over here, and so I can reach them more easily. So I do think that system is going to work for me, especially being able to clamp them down and do it one-handed, so that I can just give this hand a rest and only use it either at the very end or when I absolutely need to. And then I've been able to saw like super tiny little pieces. That one's actually, so that'll be another video if I get it to work. It's backed with pewter. So, but super tiny detailed things. I was looking for, oh, here they are. I'm afraid to even pick them. I'm not even sure I can pick them up with my thumb. Ouch. But it's actually smaller than the screw head. But that's another thing I was trying to saw out. It literally was the center of one of my impression dies, but it worked perfectly for some earrings I was working on. So anyway, I think that covers everything. So if you've got the system and it's too fiddly for you and you don't love this knob thing to hold the clamps steady, get yourself a clamp and replace your screws and your washers if you want. And hopefully that will work better for you like it did for me. Thanks for joining me. See you next time. Hi, I'm back, and I just had a follow-up. So in the original video, I talked about this quick grip clamp. I still like this. It worked great with the Gary's clamp, worked okay for this. And so I did happen to have these more like screw, I don't even remember what this was for, something for my office, I think. And it you can screw it on and off, and it works fine. The only thing I noticed was when I clamped it, this side, because there was a gap here, when I started to tighten, this would start to angle this way, put pressure on the Swanstrom clamp, and then that would start to pop up a little bit on this side. So all I did was I just stuck a pair of tweezers or something that would kind of fill up that gap a little bit. And so then when I clamp it down, it doesn't move and it doesn't pop up. So if you've got one of these clamps, they work. You just be aware that you might run into that issue. And so then I also mentioned that I was going to look for something where I could screw with my fingers. So this bolt is a hex. You're supposed to use a hex or an Allen wrench with it. And I got this set. So it's all the 6-32 screw or bolts with the hex socket head. It was much smaller than I thought, and It still works, but again, I have terrible fingers, so I'm going to talk about the other ones that I'm really going to use, but I had to fill in with some of these. And so all I do is I just keep I think it's a 7/64 inch Allen wrench to help. I don't even use the screwdriver part. It's just easier for me just to use that piece. So anyway, that set will work. If you've got better fingers than me, then you can just go ahead and use your fingers. You don't even need the Allen wrench. At the same time, I also ordered this set, and that, again, this is all off of Amazon. And so it's called a flat top. I think I looked for knurled head 6-32, and I thought I wanted the 1/2 inch. So two things with these. They work fabulous with my fingers. You know, I can just, I say as I'm having trouble, I'm trying to do this one-handed. There we go. And so I can just turn with my fingers and they work great. The problem is they're very large, and they have that, whatever that piece is, I think it just attaches the screw section to the top. They're 1/2 inch long, which is what I thought I wanted, but you can see they pop out the bottom with just a single washer. A single nut. So if you're using them on the inside, it's not that big a deal because there's a big hole there. If you're using this, like sometimes I'll just clamp this to my new Concepts bench pin and just use it that way. I don't really need the twisty turny piece of it. So if I've been using my new Concepts bench pin, I'll just clamp this and just go to town. Then having those bolts pop out the bottom could be an issue. I'll show you what I do about that, but in the middle part, it really doesn't matter. You'll see also that I used washers instead of the little red urethane pieces. And the reason I did that, I just wanted a little bit more surface area. And I was using this for pieces where I've pressed something in metal, and then the part that I'm clamping down, I'm not doing, well, in the cases of what I was really kind of trying to accomplish, I wasn't doing as much work of sawing out interior sections of a piece where I would have to worry about this marring the metal. So in this case, it was just excess metal. I didn't care that I didn't need that urethane protection. And so I added washers instead for more surface area. And easy enough, I can just twist this out, take it out, and change it if I need to, depending on what I'm doing. But the other thing that I noticed besides being too long is these heads are really big. So putting them next to each other doesn't work all that well. And so, again, typically I'm using 3 or 4 points of contact. So if it's really teeny tiny, I might have to switch out one of these or just stick one in the middle of this type because it'll be thinner and it'll fit next to each other. And then I can use a couple that I can use my fingers. I can use my fingers with these. I just don't have as much leverage when my thumb is hurting. So I might need that little 7/64 bit to help me tighten. So that's the way that I'm going to use this piece, and that seems to work fine for me. I also showed you the Gary's clamp, and it has the same issue. So with the 1/2 inch, I'm not sure if I even mentioned that this was the 1/2 inch, which is what I thought I wanted, but again, it pops out the bottom. Again, in the middle of this bench pin, not that big a deal. But on the edges, and I really kind of wanted, this is, now that I have it set up this way, probably the piece that I'm going to use the most for the teeny tiny pieces, just because I can get them much closer around the piece itself. So the set came with 10, and I got most of them on this piece. So what I did was, in the middle, if I'm using it on this, I don't really care. And so I just stuck a single nut and the urethane washers. With the outside ones that are going to be running along this urethane piece, you see they don't stick out, and that's because I did 2 nuts and a washer in between. And that was enough to take up the slack. It still works to tighten, and I can move it around just a heck of a lot easier. So I will mention, I didn't really pay attention to the way the arms looked when I got this, but the hole here where I have the screws, I don't think it's here. So I'm just wondering if that's the way it came, but the hole looks bigger on the end of this arm than the matching hole on the round piece. And I can't remember. Because I've been switching these in and out till I got it the way that I wanted it. So I noticed it on these. I haven't taken these apart to notice whether. So all that being said, these pieces may be slightly larger, and they might expand the screw hole on your clamps. So don't shoot the messenger. If you want to give it a shot, that's on you. I'm giving you fair warning. But for me, I really like the way this is working for me now. And that's the way that I'm going to go. And then the only reason I have these 2 over here is generally I mostly use just 3 arms. I like to have the option of using 4, but I ran out of the knurled tops. And so probably going to order some more of those because I really like that system. And on the Gary's clamp, the head size isn't an issue as much as it was on the Swanstrom piece, just because of the difference in the way that they work. So anyway, if you've got these pieces and it's tossed in a bin somewhere because you didn't like the way that it worked, because it was super fiddly / you have a hand like I do, that just makes it really hard to turn things, and you wanted a system that wasn't going to completely slow you down, but would help hold your pieces so that your hand could get some rest. This might be the way that you want to go. I mean, I don't know that I would recommend go out and buy these things and switch it all out like I did. But if you've got it and you're not using it, this may be a way that you can salvage your clamps and end up using them and save your hand. So thanks again for joining me. See you next time. Okay, so I wanted to show you where I kind of landed with this clamp system and using different bolts instead of the tiny bolt / screws that came with them, and made it way too fiddly to use, in my opinion. And so I found these taller knurled. Okay, so I wanted to show you where I kind of landed with this clamp system and using different bolts instead of the tiny bolt / screws that came with them, and made it way too fiddly to use, in my opinion. And so I found these taller knurled bolts that have that little thing at the top. And then I found these other ones with the red caps. Again, they're all number 6-32. size. And I just use different combinations of bolts, nuts, and washers based on the piece that I'm trying to hold. Sometimes I might have to fill in with the narrower heads, like this one's a hex. You could use the ones that came with it, although, again, those are super teeny tiny. And especially for the ones that are in the middle space, the longer screws, even if they pop out the back, work fine because they're not going to ride up against, if you've got this piece, it's not going to ride up against your bench pin if you're using this thing with the hole cut in the middle. And so in this case, like, I was using a bigger washer rather than the other washers. The ones in the middle have either no washer or smaller washers, the little urethane ones, to make them be able to fit in between the other two. But in combination, it really does end up holding it securely. And then I can put it in. I can use my clamp if I want it stationary, or not, and then be able to spin it if I want. So this is really working for me. And then the other thing that I can't remember if I filmed this part is when I'm placing it, I actually do it upside down. So like if I unscrew it, you'll be able to see. And then I can just kind of shake it and everything falls to the bottom. And then I can slide my piece in, tighten at least one of them down to kind of start holding it in place. And then I can flip it and finish adjusting. And I might have to pull some out and redo it. But they're easier to screw in there. They're easier to adjust as I'm going along if I need to. Like sometimes, depending on how much material I have left over, what the design is, I might get close to, now see, in this case, the washer readjusted and it's super close to the design. So I would probably undo this and try and slide that washer out of the way and then retighten. It's still holding the piece, but now I've got room to saw around it. So, but in some cases, just because of the way everything is, you might have to stop halfway, push, loosen up, push it to the other side. But it just works a lot better. You can just use your fingers. It's quicker and easier, in my opinion. So this is working out pretty well for me. So if you are struggling with the teeny tiny screws and washers that came with the clamping systems originally, I mean, this I'm sure probably voids any warranty situation, but I was literally thinking of shipping the items back, and now I'm going to keep it and just use it this way. So anyway, thanks once again for joining me, and we'll see you next time.